Hey guys, tonight we step into a world of clanging bells, dirt floors, and meals so bland they might actually insult your taste buds. Welcome to medieval Europe. It's early morning and you've just woken up in a room that smells like goats, fire smoke, and regret. The air is freezing. The light barely filters through the holes in your thatched roof. And yes, that was a flea. Crawling. You're about to start a day where breakfast isn't just disappointing, it's an existential crisis. You might not make it out alive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see how far our little history-loving community stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit upright on a straw mattress that's not so much a bed as it is a compressed biology experiment. It crunches when you move. That's either old rushes or something worse. Elric, the farmer whose family you're body swapping with today, stretches and hits his head on a roof beam. Again, his one-room hut is smaller than a modern garage, and you're sharing it with a wife, 3 kids, one grandmother who snores like a bellows, and a goat named Thistle. Cozy. The fire has gone out. It always does. The warmth it gave is now a cruel memory, replaced by the kind of cold that gnaws your toes like it skipped breakfast. You pull on a tunic that smells like a smoked sock. It hasn't been washed in weeks or months. There's a hint of stew, old sweat, and something fungal you refuse to investigate. The room is already noisy. A baby cries. A rooster you don't own, but who lives next door, screams at the dawn. Someone's already stepped in something on the floor. Could be mud, could be thistle. Either way, your foot's wet now. But there's hope, kind of, because it's time to eat. Welcome to breakfast. A pot sits over yesterday's embers. Inside is a lumpy gray substance bubbling with the enthusiasm of a bored snail. It's pottage. Again, always pottage. A sad stew of grains, turnip chunks, and dreams deferred. Elric's wife stirs it with the same look you'd use cleaning a litter box. She ladles it into wooden bowls, one per person, no seconds. There's no sugar, no salt, no milk. What you have is barley gruel that tastes like wet cardboard and feels like punishment. You eat it because there's nothing else. Elric's youngest smacks his lips like it's a feast. Poor soul doesn't know better yet. You try the bread. It's yesterday's, possibly last week's, hard as a rock and definitely not sliced. You gnaw at it like a desperate rodent. You think you spot a splinter. Could be wood, could be acorn. Either way, medieval teeth aren't built for this. And did someone say flavor? Not here. This loaf is a crime scene from a culinary standpoint, and yet it's a blessing, because many have even less. You drink ale. Yes, ale, at breakfast. Why? Because the water will kill you faster than any barley beer. The weak brew isn't about joy, it's survival. The kids drink it too, everyone does. Elric's toddler raises her mug like she's toasting survival. You follow suit. Across the table, Grandma smacks her lips, scratches her head, and mutters about the time meat was served 2 Christmases ago. Real meat, not rat, not found object meat. You all pause to imagine it, then take another bite of sadness. Outside, the village bell tolls. It's not breakfast music, it's the signal to get moving. Work won't wait, and your energy budget is exactly 1 pottage bowl and a crusty loaf. No butter, no jam, no eggs Benedict, just hope. As you rise, you feel it. That medieval blend of undernourishment and endless fatigue. Your knees already ache, your stomach is technically full but also emotionally empty. Breakfast hasn't energized you. It simply reminded you that hunger exists in layers. But you're alive, you have food. And in this world, that's a victory. The pottage sits like a stone in your belly as you stumble out the door into the morning mist. If refreshing is what you were hoping for, lower your standards. The village path is a slippery mix of mud, manure, and mystery liquid. The chickens are already awake and judging you. The air smells like wet hay and unwashed ambition. Welcome to peasant life. Still hungry? Tough. It's time to work. You're barefoot. Because your shoes, if you had any, fell apart last planting season. Instead, your feet squelch through the muck with every step. Elric's oldest, a lanky boy of 12 who already has the posture of a collapsed fence, trails behind you. He's carrying a hoe that's more splinter than handle. His job? Same as yours. Survive the fields. Out in the grain patch, the work begins, and it does not wait for your body to catch up. You bend, You pull, you hoe. The soil clings to your fingers like glue. Your back protests within 5 minutes. There's no coffee break, no union, no ergonomic anything. It's manual labor, medieval style, relentless, repetitive, and ruthlessly mundane. You dig up turnips. Again, it's always turnips. They're not glamorous, they don't taste good, but they grow in bad soil and they don't complain when ignored, which makes them the peasant's spirit vegetable. If you're lucky, you'll find one that hasn't been gnawed by something. If not, well, more protein. Mid-morning arrives and you pause, not because there's a break, because you're dizzy. That weak ale is wearing off and your body is begging for something, anything, more substantial than sadness and barley glue. But lunch is hours away and might just be more of what breakfast was, so don't get excited. Nearby, Elric's wife is feeding the chickens with the urgency of someone bartering for eggs that may or may not come. The birds eye her like tiny feathery bankers calculating return on investment. They don't lay often, and when they do, it's a festival. 1 egg might feed a child. 2, that's luxury. 3, that's witchcraft. The midday sun burns off the mist, revealing more of what you didn't want to see, namely your neighbor's attempt at a pigsty, which is really just a pig with boundary issues. The pig watches you. You watch it. There's mutual distrust. It's not personal. Everyone's trying to survive here, including the pig. Your stomach rumbles, loudly. Someone near you hears it and nods like, same. That's medieval solidarity. Hunger is the background music of every task. You don't ignore it, you just learn to live in harmony with it, like a bad roommate who never pays rent but somehow always uses the last of the firewood. Afternoon stretches on, the sun heavy and rude. You think about meat, not just any meat, a thick, roasted, dripping slab of something that had a name and a life. But unless your pig neighbor kicks the bucket or you get invited to a wedding, and you won't, that fantasy stays firmly in your imagination. Instead, you keep working, because if you don't, there won't be enough grain for next month. And if there's no grain, there's no bread. And if there's no bread, you'll find out what hunger really means. And spoiler, it gets worse. So you till, sweat, and pray the sun doesn't notice how close you are to collapse. Evening comes like a secondhand apology. The air cools, the shadows stretch, you wipe dirt from your face and realize it's been hours since you've had a proper meal. But you made it through the worst of it. Sort of. Back at the hut, you sit with your family. No one speaks much. There's not much to say. Everyone's tired, everyone's chewing. Dinner is drumroll more pottage. Maybe slightly different lumps. Maybe a different root vegetable floating near the surface. It's familiar. It's warm. It doesn't scream, so it's a win. Elric's daughter pokes her bowl and mutters about meat. The adults sigh. One day, maybe, but not today. You lie down that night, not full, not happy, but alive. And in this time, that's enough. Morning again. And the pottage has evolved, not in flavor, but in complexity. It's now an archaeological site of yesterday's ingredients, layers of grain, root, and unfulfilled dreams all congealing into a single cohesive mush. You eat it anyway, because your options are this or hunger. And hunger always wins. You sip your morning ale, still weak, still flat, still safer than water. The bucket of fresh water outside your hut hasn't been fresh since the last rain, which was 2 weeks ago and came with a side of dead frog. So yes, fermented barley water is the cleaner option. It also makes you feel just woozy enough to forget the smell. Today is market day, and while that sounds exciting, it's less medieval shopping spree and more controlled chaos with extra livestock. You trudge into town with a bundle of onions in hopes that someone will trade you something edible or at least not actively trying to rot in your hands. The path is lined with other villagers, all heading toward the same cramped center of commerce. The air gets thicker with each step. Sweat, manure, fish, and someone's idea of perfume. Spoiler, it's not working. Your feet ache already. Your stomach growls preemptively. You brace for disappointment. At the market square, the first thing you see is a fishmonger waving a dead eel like it owes him money. The eel does not look fresh. You pass. The bread stall has loaves that could double as building materials. You pick one up. It thuds. That's not bread. That's a weapon. Still, you consider it, because that thud is cheaper than actual wheat. And wheat is a noble's fantasy. You get barley, maybe rye, often with a little surprise ingredient like sawdust or acorn or chalk. Depending on how desperate your local baker is, your bread might also be slightly crunchy in the "what did I just bite" way. You swap onions for a loaf. You sniff it. Definitely acorn. Possibly mold, but it's food. Kind of. Nearby, a woman shouts about salted herring. Another yells about eggs, which may or may not be real. You see a child bite into a fruit that looks like it gave up halfway through ripening. His face confirms your suspicion. The market is not for pleasure, it's for necessity, and occasionally for lies. At the corner, an alewife offers you a jug of something brown and foamy. You hesitate. She smiles. You take it. One sip later, you realize it's been watered down so far it might legally be classified as pond. But the alcohol kills the germs, so you drink. Because this is not about enjoyment, it's about microbial survival. Someone bumps into you, apologizes with a grunt. You turn. It's Tomond, the town baker, the man who once put chalk in the bread to stretch it further. He grins like nothing happened. You nod like you've forgotten, but your teeth remember. You pass the meat stand, or what claims to be meat. It's a pile of questionable chunks, some still twitching. The vendor swears it's mutton. The flies disagree. You move on. Fish barrels line the next stall. Herring, eel, cod, all preserved in enough salt to desiccate a cow. One whiff and your sinus is clear. It's powerful. It's pungent. It's probably edible. But it also looks like it could survive nuclear winter. You opt out. Someone offers you a pickle. Not a jar, just one pickle. It's green. It's shriveled. It smells oddly alive. You politely decline. Your bartering is done. You leave with a slightly moldy bread brick, a questionable jug of ale, and a sprig of herbs that might be mint or might be just a really optimistic weed. Either way, it's flavor, a rare commodity. Back home, Elric's wife examines the bread. She sighs. The kids poke it. One bounces it on the table like a ball. It rebounds with too much energy. That's not a good sign. But she slices it anyway. Slices in this case means hacking at it with a knife until it gives up. Dinner is the same pottage, now seasoned with essence of market and maybe a sliver of that herb. It doesn't change much, but your nose is briefly tricked into thinking it's special. You chew, you swallow, you survive. Night falls, the stars shine faintly above the thatch, and your belly, for all its protests, is technically not empty. You lie back on your itchy straw mat and exhale. You made it through market day. You weren't poisoned, you weren't trampled, you didn't buy the pickle. That's a win in the Middle Ages. Morning breaks again, though break might be generous. It sort of leaks in through the thatch above your head. A weak gray light, diffused by fog and smoke, slips through the ceiling and lands directly on your face like nature's version of a wet slap. You're up, you're groggy, and something bit your ankle in the night. Could have been a flea, could have been Thistle, the goat. Either way, it itches. Today, the air smells worse than usual. Not just the regular mix of damp wool and old stew. No, this is something more, something special. It's coming from the back of the hut, the waste bucket, which is not just full, it's threatening to become self-aware. It's nature's revenge, and it demands attention. Welcome to medieval sanitation. You step outside to dispose of the contents, and by dispose we mean fling. Over the fence, into the ditch, across the lane, wherever the wind takes it, really. There's a customary yell you're supposed to make, "Garde-à-lou." It's Old French for "look out below," which is optimistic, considering most people don't. You toss the bucket's contents and hear a distant curse. Oops, you didn't mean to hit anyone. But it happens. You rinse the bucket in a nearby puddle, which isn't sanitary, but nothing is. There is no toilet, not even an outhouse. If you're in town, you might have access to a public latrine, which is just a long wooden plank with holes in it, suspended over a pit that even demons wouldn't haunt. You sit beside strangers. You nod awkwardly. You avoid eye contact. You try not to breathe. No privacy, no dignity, just cold drafts and suspicious puddles. If you live in a castle, lucky you, you get a garderobe. It's a hole in the wall that drops your business into the moat, which sounds clever until you realize enemies can climb up it. Yes, people have literally infiltrated castles through the poop chute. So much for strategic design. Toilet paper? Never heard of it. You wipe with straw, leaves, moss, or your sleeve if it's laundry day. Some use scraps of cloth. Others use nothing and let fate decide. This is why people didn't shake hands in medieval times. Elric's uncle once used a corn cob. He's never been the same. After you've done your business and hopefully avoided splashback, you go to wash up. This means splashing your hands with cold water from a wooden basin and maybe rubbing them with ashes or sand. Soap exists, technically, but it's rare, expensive, and smells like despair, so you make do. Meals are prepared in the same room where livestock sleep and buckets ferment. The food touches the same surfaces you walk on with your bare, dung-covered feet, and no one blinks. You grow immune, or you die. It's a 50-50. Elric's wife prepares breakfast beside the slumbering pig. The pig grunts. She ignores it. She's chopping onions with a knife that doubles as a digging tool. The cutting board is a flat rock. The pottage bubbles once more. It smells marginally less tragic today. Progress? You sip your ale. It's still flat, still safer than water. You wonder how long the barrel's been open. You wonder what's floating in it. You decide not to look. The kids run outside barefoot, giggling. Then arguing, then crying. One of them fell into something. Probably the ditch, probably the one you just used. Medieval childhood is character building. You help stir the pot, you accidentally drop a spoon into it, you fish it out, you wipe it on your tunic, you return it to the pot. Everyone saw. No one cares. That's just life. Then someone knocks. It's the neighbor, Mareth. Her face is pinched, her eyes twitchy. She whispers that her husband is sick again. Something about spoiled meat. He found a bit of pork behind the barn, thought it smelled not too bad, and now he's curled up on the floor shaking like a sack of beans. This is not uncommon. Food poisoning is a national pastime. Even royalty isn't safe. King John once died after gorging on peaches and cider. Probably not the peaches, definitely not the cider, definitely the medieval food safety standards, or lack thereof. You nod gravely. You offer her some onions. She takes them. You don't ask for anything in return. It's a community effort. If she survives, maybe she'll bring you a turnip someday. If not, well, more onions for you. Later that day, as you walk to the well, you step over garbage, animal bones, and a chicken who looks like he's reconsidering his life choices. The smell near the well is atrocious, because it's also the town dump, and the bathtub, and sometimes the graveyard. That's efficiency. You draw water, you sniff it, you pour it out, you opt for ale instead. Back at home, someone sneezes, loudly. Everyone freezes. You all wait. Is it plague? Is it hay fever? Is it something else? You don't know, you don't ask. You just casually inch toward the door. As the sun sets, the smell of dinner almost masks the smell of everything else. Almost. You eat, you swallow, you survive. And as you crawl into bed beside your family, a pig, a dog, and several million fleas, you realize again that you are living in a world where hygiene is a rumor, sanitation is a joke, and survival is an act of defiance. Tonight, the fire crackles weakly in the corner, doing its best to chase away the cold. Spoiler, it's losing. The air inside your hut is thick with smoke, steam from the pottage, and that one unnameable smell that never seems to go away. It might be mildew, it might be the pig, it might be your boots. Actually, you don't have boots, so that narrows it down. You curl up under the family blanket, which, to be clear, is not soft, not fluffy, and not really a blanket. It's a thick woolen rug that could double as medieval armor. It weighs as much as a small child and smells like every winter it survived. And it's never been washed. Not once. Outside, the wind howls through the cracks in the wall. You stuff bits of hay into the biggest gaps. They fall out. You try again. You jam your tunic against a drafty spot, knowing full well you'll need that tunic tomorrow. But if it means a tiny bit less wind tonight, it's worth it. And now, dear peasant, you sleep. Except, no, you don't. Because the floor is a dirt pancake with ambitions. It's cold, it's damp, it's alive. Not literally, you hope. But it does have a texture, and that texture is prehistoric marsh. You can feel it leaching heat from your spine with every passing second. You roll over, your elbow hits a lump, you hope it's straw, you hope it's not something moving. You try to sleep anyway. 15 minutes later, you're still awake. Why? Because Thistle the goat is snoring, loudly, rhythmically, in harmony with Elric's grandmother, who is also snoring. Somewhere, a child coughs. Another shifts in their sleep and elbows you in the ribs. You turn again. The blanket turns with you, but only halfway. You're now half warm, half exposed, and fully annoyed. Sleep in medieval times isn't a restful luxury. It's a negotiation. You try to forget about the cold, the fleas, the crick in your neck, the screaming goat, and the fact that you can hear your neighbor talking in his sleep through the wall. Not because he's loud, but because the wall is that thin. And just when you think you might doze off, you feel it, a tiny tickle on your leg, then another, then another. The fleas are awake, and they're having a family reunion. You scratch, you squirm, you curse the inventor of straw bedding. You briefly consider living outside. Then you remember, you basically are. Some peasants tried to insulate their beds with rushes, long, dry grass spread across the floor like a nature-themed carpet. It works for about 2 days. Then it flattens, then it molds, then it becomes a permanent biohazard. But at least it's better than nothing, unless you're allergic to mold, which you probably are. But there's no word for that yet. Eventually you do fall asleep, for an hour, maybe 2. Then you wake up to shivering. The fire's gone out, again. You debate getting up to relight it, but the kindling is wet, the flint is missing, and you're sandwiched between 2 children who will absolutely steal your warm spot if you move. So you lie there, eyes open, staring into the darkness and thinking about nothing. Or maybe about meat. Probably meat. This is medieval bedtime. Not a cozy ritual, not a soothing wind down. Just a slow surrender to exhaustion in a room full of bodies, barn smells, potential cholera. By morning, you feel like you've fought a small war. You sit up slowly, everything cracks. Your joints, your back, your self-esteem. You rub your face with the least dirty part of your sleeve and immediately realize that part is also dirty. The children are already up. One is chewing something you hope is bread. The other is chasing the goat. Grandma is muttering again. The sun is creeping in, and the fire, mercifully, has a single glowing ember left. Elric's wife crouches beside it, coaxing it back to life like it's a newborn. She blows gently, adds twigs, waits, it catches, barely. But it's enough. You're alive. You're cold, you're itchy, but you're alive. And that means it's time for breakfast. You know what's coming. You don't want to believe it, but you know. The pot is back. The ladle is moving. And yes, the pottage has returned for its 6th consecutive performance. It sloshes into your bowl with a sound that can only be described as wet resignation. The color, somewhere between beige and despair. The texture, gelatinous grit. The smell, neutral, like it's trying not to draw attention to itself. You chew, though chew is a strong word for what your jaw is doing. It's more like polite gumminess. There's a chunk in there. It might be a turnip, might be bark. Either way, it's chewy and it's yours. You dip the bread. It softens the rock-like loaf just enough to let your teeth in without risking a fracture. That's a blessing, because dental care in medieval times is mostly don't smile too hard or things will fall out. As you eat, you remember something. Meat. You haven't seen it in days, maybe weeks. There was a rumor someone slaughtered a pig last Sunday, but that was in the next village over, and the only proof was a suspiciously greasy traveler with a smug expression. For peasants, meat is an event, a once-in-a-blue-moon situation. Pigs, chickens, cows, if you own them, you don't eat them. You milk the cow. You collect eggs from the chicken. And the pig? He's your composting system and backup alarm clock. Killing one is like burning your house down because it was cold. That's why when meat does arrive on a wedding day, a holy festival, or if something dies unexpectedly, it's used with fanatical efficiency. Nothing is wasted, not the liver, not the lungs, not the intestines. You don't just eat nose to tail. You eat nose, tail, and everything in between. Elric once shared a story. A neighbor cooked a stew using every organ of a goat plus 2 mystery items they never identified. They called it the special. It fed 15 people. No one died. Mostly. Today, there is no special. There is only pottage. You finish your bowl and feel not full, but not empty either. It's a holding pattern. Enough to work, not enough to thrive. And that's all anyone expects. You step outside and breathe in. The air is crisp or maybe just cold. Either way, it stings your lungs, which is proof you're still breathing. That's encouraging. You walk toward the animal pens. Time to check the chickens. You open the creaky wooden gate and immediately get pecked. That's Henrietta. She's always been aggressive. She lays eggs once every 3 weeks and guards them like they're royal jewels. No eggs today. Just judgmental clucking. The pig grunts. You grunt back. Mutual understanding. In the distance, you hear the bell again. It tolls not for thee, but for thy unpaid labor. Back to the fields. You pick up your hoe, which now has more splinters than handle. You head to the barley patch. It's muddy, uneven, and full of rocks that you swear weren't there yesterday. You dig, you weed, you pull. Around midday, a strange scent wafts through the air. Could it be? Meat? You sniff again. It's faint, but unmistakable. Someone, somewhere is roasting something. You follow your nose. It leads you to Taman's hut, the baker, known chalk enthusiast. His door is ajar. Inside, a fire burns hot. A spit turns, and on that spit, a bird, a real one, probably a pigeon, possibly a pheasant. That's maybe something he found. You make eye contact with Tamand. He closes the door slowly. The smell fades. You return to your field. You dig with extra bitterness. By late afternoon, your stomach is empty again. The morning pottage has betrayed you. It promised survival. It delivered only delay. You head home, legs aching, back bent, arms covered in mud and hay. Dinner is ready. It's pottage. But wait, tonight it's different. There's something floating on top. A sliver of fat. A whisper of meat. You stare. The kids stare. Even the goat stops chewing to look. Elric's wife shrugs. Found it. Found what? No one asks. Everyone eats. You close your eyes and let the flavor wash over you. It's salty. It's savory. It's possibly squirrel. But it's meat. Actual meat. For the first time in forever, you savor it like a fine wine. One greasy drop, one blissful chew. The bowl is licked clean. Everyone sits back, quietly victorious. Outside, the stars twinkle. Inside, you burp. That's how you know it was real. Today, you had meat, and that changes everything. You wake up to the usual morning orchestra. Goats bleating, babies crying, and something squelching underfoot. But today, you rise with a little more pep. Why? Because last night, you had meat. One precious, oily shard of protein that's now permanently etched into your soul like a culinary tattoo. Of course, you're still hungry. That single sliver wasn't a meal, it was a memory. But even so, it's the medieval version of winning the lottery. You savor the glow as long as possible, which is about 7 minutes before the cold kicks in and your spine starts making noises. You get dressed in your usual outfit. Singular. It's the same tunic you've worn all week, all month, possibly since last harvest. It smells like a smoked sheep and fits like a potato sack. You try not to think about what it's growing. Your boots, still theoretical, are replaced with strips of cloth tied around your feet. These provide all the protection of a wet napkin and the comfort of crunchy socks. The weather is not helping. It's drizzling. Again. Or still. It's hard to tell. The thatch roof has developed a leak directly above your bed, which now has a small puddle and one confused chicken who mistook it for a bird bath. You shoo it away. It squawks in betrayal. Outside, the mud has become more aggressive. It sucks at your feet like it wants to keep you. You trudge toward the fields, your breath fogging in the air. It's cold. Not freeze your eyebrows off, cold. Just enough to make every joint complain and every task feel like a punishment from an angry god. Elric's oldest Joran is already at the plot, hacking at the ground with a stick, not a farming tool, just a literal stick. Because the actual hoe snapped last week and hasn't been replaced. You nod at him. He grunts back. That's peak medieval communication. You work, you sweat, you shiver, and all the while, you dream of meat. Again, around mid-morning you hear commotion near the village square. A cart has arrived. You leave your muddy furrow to investigate. Other peasants are already gathering like moths to a flickering lantern. It's a traveling merchant. He's got wares, and by wares we mean 3 dead fish, some moldy apples, and, wait for it, a sack of spice. Not cinnamon, not nutmeg, just spice. The kind that smells vaguely of hope and is probably 40% dirt. Still, it's exotic, it's rare, it's absurdly expensive. How much for a pinch, someone asks. 7 oxen, the merchant replies. You're not sure if he's joking. No one laughs. Spices are the domain of nobles and monks. Cinnamon, ginger, pepper, those are fantasy items. Imported through dangerous trade routes, guarded like treasure, and measured out in grains smaller than your fingernail. For you, there's garlic, maybe vinegar, mustard seeds if you're lucky, but mostly there's nothing. Just bland. All the bland. You walk away from the cart before your soul gets too jealous. Back at the hut, Elric's wife is experimenting. She found a scrap of dried herb in the bottom of a storage jar. It might be thyme, it might be moss. Either way, it's going into tonight's pottage, because even a hallucination of flavor is better than none. While she cooks, you inspect the bread situation. 1 loaf left. It's hard enough to use as a weapon. You wrap your knuckles on it. It thunks. You sigh. It's time to face the truth. This bread was stretched with filler. You break it open and inspect the crumb. Crumb is generous. It's more like sawdust glued together with bitterness. You can see flecks of something. Acorn, maybe. Chalk, possibly. Sawdust, definitely. Bakers stretch their flour like their lives depend on it. Because they do. Tommen the baker, he's infamous for his flour fraud. The last loaf he sold had more bark than wheat. But what can you do? Arrest him? There are no food inspectors, no health codes, just aching teeth and quiet despair. You eat it anyway, because that's life. Dinner arrives, the pottage is thinner tonight and the bread is more chew than substance. But there's that herb, that faint, possibly imaginary flavor. It tickles your tongue. You convince yourself it's delicious, because survival is as much mental as it is physical. As you eat, you hear a story. A traveler passed through a monastery 2 towns over. He claims they had a garden, a real one, with herbs, fresh vegetables, and something called honey-roasted carrots. You blink, you drool a little. You pretend not to care, but your stomach knows betrayal when it hears it. Monks live better than you, that's a fact. Their gardens are enclosed. Their recipes are written down. Some even have cookbooks, handwritten tomes with measurements, instructions, and marginally edible outcomes. It's not fair, but it's not new. You finish your bowl and lick the sides, not out of greed, out of habit. No one wastes food, not even the ghost of flavor. Night falls, you lie down again in your communal bed fort. The wind howls, the fleas reconvene, and you fall asleep dreaming of pepper. Just pepper, a single black grain. Heaven. You wake up with a sneeze. Not the polite kind either. The kind that explodes out of you like your body's trying to expel the entire 14th century. Your nose is running, your eyes are watering, and your throat feels like someone scraped it with a barley loaf. Great, you're sick. But guess what? That doesn't matter, because there's no such thing as a sick day in the Middle Ages. You're not calling into a boss, you're not curling up with a hot tea and a fuzzy blanket. You're crawling out of bed and hoping your fever doesn't qualify as plague adjacent. Elric's wife glances at you, she nods, but there's no sympathy in it. Everyone's sick, all the time. Sniffles, coughs, weird rashes. If you're not actively vomiting or dying, you're expected to function. So you wipe your nose on your sleeve, which is now 30% mucus, and shuffle toward the fire. The embers are weak. You poke them, they sulk. You add twigs and hope. It catches slowly. The pot goes on top. The pottage resumes its eternal boil. You sniff again, not from the illness, from habit. You check your surroundings. No dead rodents in the corner, no visible mold growth beyond the usual. So far, so good. You sip your morning ale. It burns slightly, which is either the alcohol or your throat staging a rebellion. Either way, it's better than water. Today, there's a rumor. Someone saw a carrot, not a bunch, not a basket. One single orange pointy miracle, possibly in the possession of the blacksmith's wife. The news spreads like wildfire. People speculate. Was it traded? Grown? Smuggled from the monastery? Nobody knows, but everybody wants it. Carrots, you see, are rare. Not mythical, but close. Especially fresh ones. You get roots like turnips and onions. They last. They're hardy. But a sweet, crisp carrot? That's peasant gold. You could trade it for favors or for bread that doesn't bite back. You don't see the carrot, but you do see the growing envy. Everyone wants more than they have, but no one dares say it too loud, because food envy is dangerous. Jealousy leads to theft. Theft leads to punishment. And punishment often involves stocks, whippings, or being banned from the communal pottage rotation, which is worse than death. You trudge to the field again, your nose is dripping, your back aches, the sun is trying its best, but the clouds aren't having it. The mud is squishier today, somehow wetter than water. Your feet are already numb. Elric's son, Joran, sneezes beside you. You look at each other. You don't need to speak. You've both joined the mucus brigade. By midday, your stomach is howling. Not politely rumbling, howling, but there's nothing new to eat. So you chew a strip of old bread, possibly the same one from last week. It's gone from firm to calcified. You suck on it more than chew it. Eventually it gives in. Back at the hut, dinner prep is in full swing, which is to say the pot is boiling and everyone's trying to guess what the floating object is. Elric thinks it's cabbage. Elric's wife swears it's a leek. Joran says it's definitely not moving anymore. You decide not to ask. Dinner is served. The taste? Slightly more acidic today. Possibly the vinegar, possibly your throat, possibly the fact that someone added fermented apple bits to brighten the flavor. It brightens. All right, like a slap to the taste buds. As you eat, you remember stories from the travelers about nobles dining on spiced duck, candied fruit, and stews with actual flavor. You imagine them pouring gravy over meat, sipping real wine, laughing at court jesters. Meanwhile, you're biting into something that might be a potato, or might be a rock wearing a disguise. But you don't complain. Complaining is a luxury. So you chew, swallow, and smile with your eyes closed, pretending it's pheasant under glass instead of disappointment under garlic. Night comes again. Your nose still drips, your throat still burns, but your stomach is quiet. And in this time, that's the closest thing to peace. You lie down, surrounded by family, snoring livestock, and the faint scent of overcooked cabbage. You drift off to sleep, dreaming not of feasts or wealth or grandeur, but of soup. Real soup. With salt. Maybe a carrot, one day. Maybe. It's raining. Again, not a gentle, romantic drizzle. This is the kind of rain that feels personal, like the sky took offense to your very existence. The roof is leaking in 3 places. The bucket under the main drip is already full. The pig is whining in his corner like he, too, is tired of being damp. You drag yourself out of bed. Everything is wet. The floor is wet. The blanket is wet. You are wet. And you haven't even gone outside yet. Elric is already up, staring out the tiny window like he's trying to mentally cancel the entire day. His beard is dripping, even though he's indoors. That's how humid it is. You both exchange a look that says, "We hate this," and then proceed to do exactly what's expected. Keep going. The fire won't start. The wood is damp. The flint is missing again. Elric's wife curses softly under her breath as she strikes the same rock for the 10th time. Sparks. Smoke. Nothing. Eventually it catches. Barely. You all crowd around the baby flame like it's a miracle. Because it is. The pottage is thinner today. Rainwater got into the pot. It's soup now. Bonus hydration or extra sadness? You decide not to decide. Breakfast is quiet. Everyone chews with the solemnity of a funeral. You sip your ale. It's flat, of course, but this morning it also tastes a bit like mold, possibly because the barrel got wet or because everything in this village is molding slowly. The road outside the hut has turned to slop. Mud swallows your feet with every step. You nearly lose a sandal, if a strip of cloth counts as a sandal. You curse the rain. The rain doesn't care. Work today is impossible. The fields are too soggy to till. The grain storage is leaking. Rats have moved in, and they are not paying rent. You find one of them trying to drag a barley kernel the size of its head into a hole in the wall. You scare it off. It squeaks in betrayal. Elric decides to patch the roof, which means climbing onto it while the rain is still falling. You hold the ladder. It wobbles. He climbs. He nearly falls. The pig watches with interest. You all silently agree to pretend this is going well. While Elric hammers soggy thatch into place, you collect what little dry straw you can find. It's not much. Most of it is just damp flavoring now, useless as insulation, bedding, or kindling. You pile it in the corner anyway. It's the thought that counts. The children, meanwhile, have turned the puddles into a play zone. They're muddy, soaked, and laughing. It's the happiest anyone's looked all week. You let them, because joy is rare and filth is constant. So why not embrace both? By midday, everyone's wet, cold, and slightly moldier than when they woke up. The fire's barely hanging on. The pot bubbles away like it resents its own existence. Elric's wife adds a dried root to the mix. She says it's parsnip. You're skeptical. It looks like something a horse might reject, but it softens eventually. You eat it. It's vaguely sweet, possibly poison, definitely edible. Probably. The neighbor, Mareth, stops by. She's holding a bundle of herbs wrapped in cloth. She says it's for the chill. She says it might be sage, it might also be weeds. No one's sure anymore. But the thought is appreciated. You add a pinch to the pot. The aroma changes, slightly. You all lean in and sniff. Hope? Maybe, or just the power of suggestion. Either way, it's new. And that's enough. Dinner is served with ceremony. Everyone gets a bowl. Everyone inhales deeply. There's almost flavor in this one. You slurp, you nod, you smile with the corners of your mouth. This is as close to joy as a rainy medieval Tuesday gets. As night falls, the rain lightens. The roof patch holds for now. The pig has stopped whining. The children are asleep in a tangle of limbs and straw. You sit by the fire, toes steaming, bowl in hand, blanket draped over your shoulders like royalty. You made it through the rain. You're not dry, you're not warm, but you're fed. And that's enough. You wake up to silence, not the peaceful, gentle silence of a calm morning. No. This is the heavy, suspicious silence of a house holding its breath. Something's wrong. Something's missing. Then you realize the rooster hasn't crowed, neither have the chickens or the goat. You sit up quickly, too quickly, and immediately regret it as your neck creaks like an old door hinge. Outside, the village feels still, which, again, isn't normal, still means something's up. And in medieval Europe, something's up is never good. You open the door and step outside. The mud is dry, the sky is gray, overcast but not stormy. No animals in sight, no neighbors yelling, no baby crying, just an eerie quiet. You spot Joran by the well. He waves you over, a little too fast, a little too nervously. "We found it," he says. "It?" You follow him around the corner, and there it is, sprawled in the middle of the lane like a forgotten boot. A rat, bloated, and far too close to the houses. Now, rats aren't exactly rare here. You live among them. They're neighbors, freeloaders, uninvited dinner guests. But this one looks sick. Purple around the eyes, swollen feet, bubbling something from the nose. You step back. Joran shrugs. Could be nothing. It's never nothing. Within the hour, the talk has spread. Mareth's youngest has a fever. Elric's grandmother isn't eating. Someone coughed 3 times in a row, and now the baker's wife won't go near them. Panic moves faster than disease. But the disease, it's not far behind. You keep working, because you have to. The fields don't plow themselves. But your eyes keep darting to the village, to the coughing neighbor, to the goat that won't stop pacing. That night, you eat in silence. The pottage has been watered down again. It's more of a broth now. Someone says it's to make it last longer. Everyone knows it's because no one wants to touch the food too much anymore. You hear more coughing in the distance. Not the usual kind. The deep, hacking kind. The kind that comes from the bottom of the lungs and drags itself across the village like a death bell. Elric's wife cleans the bowls more thoroughly than usual. She even boils the water first. That's how serious it is. You lie down on your straw mat with one eye open. The fire pops, the wind groans through the walls, and every time someone shifts or clears their throat, you flinch. In the morning, Mareth doesn't come to trade. In the afternoon, the blacksmith locks his door. By evening, 2 huts are boarded shut. No one says it, no one dares. But it's here. The sickness, the food tastes the same, but every bite feels dangerous. Is the pottage safe? Was the bread touched by someone sick? You wash your hands more than usual, by which we mean twice. You boil the ale, just in case. The fear is real now, not just a story from travelers or whispers about another town. It's here, in the air, in the water, in the bread. You eat less, you sleep less, and when you finally do sleep, you dream of coughing and rats and empty bowls. Days blur together like bad soup, thin, repetitive, and vaguely unsettling. The sickness doesn't roar in, it creeps, quiet at first. A cough here, a shiver there. But every cough feels louder now. Every shiver gets noticed. You try to pretend things are normal. You patch the roof, you weed the fields. You chew your bread like it's not made of sorrow and tree bark, but the air has changed. People are avoiding each other. Even the animals seem skittish. The goat won't make eye contact. You pass the baker's hut. The door is shut. Smoke's not coming out of the chimney anymore. That's not a good sign. You stop by Mareth's home. No answer. The herbs by the door have wilted. That's not a good sign either. At night, the village feels haunted. Doors are closed, windows are shuttered, fires are dim. You hear someone crying softly through a wall. You don't ask. Food is still being cooked, but with less enthusiasm. The pottage has turned defensive, watery, bland, and aggressively utilitarian. Elric's wife stopped seasoning it altogether. She says the herbs might be contaminated. Or maybe it's just that no one wants to taste anything too strongly anymore. Elric doesn't talk much. He sharpens a stick that might be a hoe or might be a weapon. You don't ask. Joran stopped going to the fields. He says he's just tired. You hear him coughing at night. Grandma hasn't gotten up in 2 days. The kids are quieter than usual. The market is shut down. No fishmongers, no chalk bread, no moldy carrots. Just an empty square and a smell that's starting to settle in. A kind of musty, metallic, uncertain rot. You boil everything now. The ale. The water. Even the bread, briefly. You know it doesn't help much, but it makes you feel like you're doing something. Control is an illusion, but it's the only thing left. Then it hits closer. Elric's wife, strong and steady and never one to complain, wakes up sweating. She says it's nothing, that it's just the cold, that the pottage is too salty, but you see it in her eyes. By evening, she can't stand. By nightfall, she's burning. You sit beside her, wiping her face with the cleanest rag you can find, which in this house still smells faintly of goat. She doesn't complain, she just stares at the ceiling, mumbling something about saffron, about the color, about stew. You try to distract the kids. You tell them stories about King Arthur. You leave out the part where most of his knights also died of mysterious fevers. That night, no one sleeps. The fire crackles, the wind wails, and Elric sits completely still, his eyes not moving, his hands clutching a wooden spoon like it's a sword. You keep eating, because you have to. But the food is mechanical now. One spoonful, chew, swallow, repeat, not for taste, not for comfort, just for survival. And as you lie down next to your coughing, feverish household, you wonder, is this how it ends, with lukewarm pottage and a house full of silence? You close your eyes and listen to the breathing around you. 1, 2, 3. Still here, for now. You wake up to silence. Not the gentle kind that whispers peace. No. This silence is heavy, deliberate. It wraps around the room like a fog, muffling every breath, every heartbeat. You don't hear the chickens or the pig, or even the roof creaking in its usual morning protest. Something's wrong. You feel it in your bones before you even open your eyes. The fire has gone out, the air is cold and damp, and the blanket, your one woolen shield against the world, is soaked at the edges where the roof drip found its nightly target. You shift upright and immediately notice it, the emptiness. She's gone. Elric's wife, the sturdy one, the one who held this hut together with nothing but grit, garlic, and an iron ladle. You glance toward the far wall where she lay last night, barely breathing, drenched in fever. Now there's only a rolled-up cloth, a dent in the straw, a bath, and the stale imprint of her absence. Elric is still by the fire pit, unmoving. He hasn't said a word since before sunset yesterday, just sat there, staring into coals that eventually blinked out. His hands are clenched into fists, not with rage, but with the kind of grief that turns bones brittle. You know what comes next. There's no time to mourn properly, no time to reflect. There's work to be done, as always. You move quietly, careful not to wake Joran. The boy is curled into himself, skin pale, breath shallow. His fever has broken, but he's weak. Thinner than last week, bones showing through tunic and skin. The door groans as you open it. The outside world greets you with mud, fog, and the stench of something decaying nearby. Maybe an animal, maybe not. The neighbor's dog hasn't barked in days. You don't ask questions anymore. Behind the house near the turnip patch, you begin to dig. The ground is soft from last night's rain. Your fingers blister against the wooden handle, but you don't stop. You know the routine. This isn't your first grave. You wrap her in the cleanest cloth you own, a bit of linen that once belonged to your own mother. It smells of smoke, soap root, and memory. Elric helps you carry her out. Still silent. His eyes are glassy but dry. There are no tears left in this house. You lay her down gently. There's no priest, no hymn, just your quiet breath and the shivering wind. She liked leeks, you whisper. It's not a eulogy, it's just what comes out. You cover her with earth and press the soil flat with your palms. Joran doesn't come outside. You're not sure if he even noticed she's gone yet. Back inside, the hut feels colder. The fire refuses to catch. The wood is too damp. You blow on it anyway, like a dying ritual. Eventually, a flame stirs, small, stubborn, like you. You ladle out the morning pottage. It's thinner than usual. More water, fewer turnips. You taste it. It's edible. Barely. But you swallow it because you must, because life insists on routine, even when the heart wants nothing. Joran opens his eyes and blinks. "Where's Ma?" he whispers. You pause, then lie. "She went to the river." You hate yourself for it, but the truth has no nourishment. You feed him slowly, a spoonful at a time. He eats, not much, but enough. He sleeps again. You breathe. The day crawls. You tend to the animals. What's left of them? One chicken, half a pig, a goat that seems more melancholic than usual. You look around and realize the village is fading. Fewer fires, fewer footsteps, fewer sounds. Even the birds seem to have moved on. At midday, someone knocks. You freeze. No one knocks anymore. Not unless something's wrong. It's Mareth. She stands in the doorway, soaked to the knees, clutching a cloth-wrapped bundle like it's made of gold. "Bread," she says. You stare at it. Steam curls from the crust. "Real bread. Fresh. Soft. I had a little flour left," she says. "Thought you might." You nod. You don't trust your voice. Inside, you tear it into pieces. Share it with Elric. With Joran when he stirs again. The bread is warm, slightly sour, heavenly. You haven't tasted yeast in weeks. You dip it in the pottage, it disintegrates into richness. You almost cry. Mareth sits with you for a while, doesn't say much, just watches the fire poking it when it begins to fade. When she leaves, she squeezes your hand, hard. That night, the hut is quiet again, but not empty. Joran stirs in his sleep. Elric finally lays down. The fire burns just a little brighter. You lie there, listening to the creak of the roof, the distant croak of frogs, the faint scrape of a mouse behind the barrels, and for the first time in a long time, you let yourself believe. You might make it through this. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Morning comes wrapped in fog and mud. The village looks like it's been dipped in sadness, wrung out, and left to mold. You stretch under the itchy woolen blanket, your body sore from sleep that wasn't rest, only survival. Joran wakes with a weak cough. Still alive, still burning with fever, but the worst seems to have passed. You feed him warm broth and he doesn't fight the spoon this time. That's progress. You even get a whisper of a smile when you hand him a crust of yesterday's bread, the one Mareth brought. He holds it like it's a holy relic. You half expect him to bow. Elric hasn't spoken since the burial. He moves around the hut like a shadow with bones, his face carved from something older than grief. You want to shake him, scream, do something, anything to break the silence. But you don't. Because in this place, silence is sacred. Sometimes it's all that keeps a man from crumbling completely. You head out to the field. It's not planting season, but the weeds don't care. The soil squelches under your feet like wet cloth. Your boots, or what passes for them, are barely holding together. One step, and your heel disappears into the muck. You pull weeds with hands that tremble. Not from illness, from hunger. It's a slow gnawing now, not the sharp pang of missed meals, but the dull ache of weeks with too little. Your ribs feel like shelves, your stomach an echo chamber. Mareth appears around midday. She's carrying a bundle of wild greens and something wrapped in a damp cloth. Turnips, she says, holding them out like medals. The decent kind, not the ones that grow angry. You laugh. You don't mean to. It bursts out like a hiccup. It's the first sound of joy you've made in days. She stays for lunch. You boil the greens with thin barley. The turnips melt into the broth, lending it a sweetness you forgot food could have. Even Elric eats a spoonful. No words, but his shoulders sag just slightly, as if letting go of a single stone he's been carrying. Mareth talks as you eat. Little things. Who's still alive? Who isn't? How the church bell hasn't rung in over a week. The priest left, apparently. Or died, or turned into a goat, she jokes. No one really knows. She says the miller's daughter had a fever and walked straight into the river 2 nights ago. They found her clothes neatly folded on the bank. Nothing else. She says it like she's reporting the weather. This is what the world has become. Grief and hunger, served in daily rations. After she leaves, you find a bit of onion tucked under the floorboards, left over from last month, slightly shriveled but still potent. You add it to the stew. It transforms everything. The scent fills the hut like perfume. Joran wakes just from the smell, his eyes wide. Is that real? He asks. You nod. Onion. He whispers the word again like it's magic. Dinner is almost festive, which is strange. You're still in mourning, still surrounded by sickness, still starving. But for a few minutes, as the onion-scented steam fogs the air, as Joran giggles at nothing, as Elric closes his eyes while chewing, you remember how life used to taste. You clean the bowls with boiled water and cloth. No risks. You remember the rat from last week. The bloated one. It haunts you more than any ghost. Night falls fast. The fire burns low but steady. You sit by it, cradling what's left of Mareth's bread. You're saving it for breakfast, or maybe for a trade, or maybe for nothing. Just knowing it's there makes you feel less empty. Outside, the rain returns, but softer now, less angry, the air smells cleaner, or maybe that's just your imagination. Elric finally speaks. Thank you. 2 words. Dry. Cracked. But real. You don't reply. You just nod. That's enough. You lie down, pulling the blanket over your shoulders. Joran is already asleep beside you. Elric remains by the fire, his eyes reflecting its orange glow. The wind hums through the cracks in the wall. The goat makes a single, uncertain bleat. Somewhere in the dark, a bird calls out, something nocturnal, something wild. And for the first time in a long time, the silence doesn't feel like mourning. It feels like rest. It's the kind of mourning that doesn't announce itself. No sunrise, no rooster, no optimistic bird song. just a slow gray glow bleeding in through the cracks in the wall, like the sky's half asleep and not particularly enthusiastic about showing up. You understand the feeling. The fire is cold. Your feet are colder. Joran's curled up like a snail, knees to chest, one arm thrown over his eyes. He twitches in his sleep, muttering something about stew. Not surprising. That if you dreamed about anything other than food these days, it'd probably be a sign of madness. You sit up and stretch, every joint popping like old furniture. The smell of damp wool and dying embers hits your nose. Nothing is fresh. Nothing is dry. You toss some twigs into the hearth and coax it back to life with a breath and a prayer. The pot goes on. Elric's already outside. You hear the soft thud of a hoe hitting earth. He's digging again. Not for burial this time, at least, you hope not. Just tending to what little's left of the garden, turning over soil that hasn't seen sunlight in 3 weeks. You watch him through the slats in the wall. Hair damp from fog, shoulders heavy, hands moving on instinct. You ladle a bit of yesterday's pottage into a bowl, stir in some extra water to make it stretch. The broth is thin, cloudy, and reluctant, like it knows it's the third encore of a performance no one enjoyed to begin with. You add a pinch of dried herbs, possibly thyme, possibly crushed leaf bits from the corner shelf. Whatever it is, it smells vaguely green and gives the illusion of culinary ambition. Joran eats slowly, his appetite better but still wary. He asks if you think Mareth will come again today. You tell him maybe. You don't want to say that Mareth's visits are becoming rarer, her face more drawn, her arms thinner. Hope's a fragile thing, and Joran's holding on to his with 2 small, muddy hands. After breakfast, you venture into the woods. Not far, just to the edge where the brambles haven't reclaimed the path completely. You're looking for mushrooms, or herbs, or anything edible that won't kill you immediately. The forest is quiet. No birds, no rustling, just the sound of your own breath and the squelch of your feet in the moss. You find a few small mushrooms, the safe kind, you think? You remember the ones Elric's wife used to pick? The squat little ones with dull caps, not the shiny ones that look like they're daring you to make a mistake. You tuck them into your pouch and head home, watching the sky for signs of more rain. Always more rain. The clouds are a permanent fixture now, like a dirty blanket no one's bothered to shake out. Back at the hut, Elric's come inside. He smells of wet earth and silence. You hand him the mushrooms. He nods once. A big gesture these days. You make stew, not pottage, stew. It's semantics, yes? But the mushrooms give it a richer texture. The broth is darker, thicker. There's even a bit of chew. You serve it with reverence. Joran lights up like a candle. This tastes alive, he says wide-eyed. You laugh. A real laugh, sharp and sudden. It surprises both of you. The door creaks open mid-bite. Mareth steps in, soaked to the bone, clutching a small bag. Barley, she says, shaking the pouch like a gift. Traded it for a half spool of thread and a curse word. You want to hug her, but she looks like she'd snap in half. You offer her a bowl of the stew. She eats without talking. There's something behind her eyes today. Tired, yes, but also suspicious, like she's seen something she didn't want to see. They're burning the huts, she mutters between bites. You pause. Who? The big ones. The houses near the chapel. Sick folk inside. Too many to bury, they say. No one responds. The fire cracks. You realize your hut isn't far from there. A few doors down, a few coughs away, the stew suddenly tastes like ash. After Mareth leaves, you check your supplies. You don't have much. Half a loaf of stale bread, a scoop of dried peas, the last of the barley, and your emergency onion. You debate hiding it. The onion. Just in case. Not because you're selfish, but because you're scared. But in this time, those two things are the same. Elric sharpens his knife by the fire. Slowly, carefully. You don't ask why. You all need something to do. That night, the rain returns. You eat what's left of the stew. It's still warm, still earthy, still real. You watch Joran sleep, his chest rising and falling like a bellows. You pull the blanket higher over his shoulders and tuck the corners under. Elric's already snoring. You lie awake a little longer, listening for boots, listening for flames, listening for silence. The boots come at dawn, not the thud of familiar village feet. These are heavy, leather-bound, purposeful, the kind that belong to men who don't knock. You hear them before you see them, echoing down the muddy path like thunder trapped in a barrel. Elric hears them too. He's already up, blade in hand, not raised, just held, like a gesture, or maybe a comfort. Joran stirs, but doesn't sit up. He knows better than to move when fear walks past the door. You peek through the gap in the wood. 3 men, not soldiers, wrong posture, not villagers, too clean. One of them wears a dark cloak. His face is pale, nose sharp, eyes sunken from too many sleepless nights or too much authority. Maybe both. They carry torches in the daytime. You don't wait for a knock. You open the door. The pale one steps forward. His voice is smooth, but uninterested in small talk. We've come from the town, checking for infection, following the bishop's orders. You nod. Anyone here been sick? Everyone. But you say, my nephew had a fever. He's recovering. The man steps past you without invitation. He scans the hut like it's a puzzle missing a piece. His companion lifts the blanket over Joran. The boy flinches but stays still. His forehead is cool now, no signs of sweat. The man feels his pulse, grunts, moves on. The leader sniffs the air. No rot, that's good. As if your entire life could be reduced to an aroma test. Elric doesn't say a word. Just stands there, the knife now tucked behind his leg like a pet. We're burning dwellings with confirmed cases, the man says casually, like he's describing the weather. It's containment, not punishment. You nod again. That's all you can do when the man holding fire tells you it's for your own good. They leave without ceremony. The boots fade, the silence returns, but not the comforting kind. This one's twitchy, afraid. You sit down and realize your hands are shaking. Later, you fetch water from the well. Mareth meets you there, eyes wide. They burned old Tomlin's house, she whispers. He wasn't even dead, just couldn't move fast enough. You almost vomit. You return home with full buckets and an empty soul. You rinse the pot, grind a few grains of barley, and pretend you're still hungry. That evening, you make soup. It's thinner than usual, but no one complains. Everyone eats like it's a ritual here, not a meal. You chew slowly, as if dragging out the moment will keep the torchbearers at bay. Joran says his chest feels tight. You press your ear to it. His breath wheezes, shallow and slow. You say it's probably the damp air. He nods, trusting you. You lie better than you used to. You wrap him in the thickest blanket. You crush the last dried herb Mareth gave you, probably mint, and boil it in water. The steam smells hopeful. He breathes it in like salvation. Elric doesn't sleep that night, neither do you. You sit by the fire, sharpening your blade. Not for protection, you know better, just for control. The act, the rhythm. Outside, a dog howls. Far off, a scream cuts through the fog, short, guttural. It ends too fast. You don't talk about it. The next morning, the sky is orange. Not from sunrise, from smoke. You smell it before you see it. Down the hill, 3 huts are burning. Flames clawing up through thatched roofs, devouring the memories inside. You recognize one, Mareth's neighbor. You wonder if they knocked first. You check your food. 1 onion, a pinch of oats, the heel of Mareth's bread, now hard as stone. You break it in half, soak it in broth, and call it breakfast. Joran is still asleep, his face pale, hands cold. You lift him gently and place him nearer the fire. Elric stares out the door, eyes narrowed at the rising smoke. They'll come again, he says. You nod. They'll smell the fever, he adds. You nod again. Silence. Then Elric picks up the blanket from his wife's old cot. He folds it carefully, deliberately. You know what he's thinking, but no one says it out loud. You eat dinner early, more habit than hunger. Soup again, always soup, and you wait. The waiting is the worst part. The food is gone. Every last crust, every bitter herb, every scoop of oats that once pretended to be a meal. The pot is empty, scrubbed clean more out of boredom than hygiene. You stare into its dark belly, hoping something edible might magically appear. Spoiler, it doesn't. Joran's fever has returned. It came back like an old tax collector, familiar, unwanted, and absolutely relentless. He lies curled in the corner, shivering beneath 2 blankets, sweating like it's summer in hell. You try everything. Cloth on the forehead, herb steam, soft humming, even though you can't sing and everyone knows it. Elric sits beside him, dipping a rag in cool water and squeezing it over the boy's wrists like it might drain the heat out. Why does it come back? Joran mumbles. You don't answer, because saying the world is broken doesn't sound very comforting. Outside, the sky is bruised, not cloudy, just tinted, like the sun's embarrassed to be associated with Earth today. You step out and scan the village. What's left of it? Smoke still clings to the air like guilt. A few huts remain untouched, but most look abandoned or charred. A ghost town, but the ghosts are too hungry to leave. You walk toward the stream, not the main well. Too risky. Too watched. You fill a jug with the coldest, clearest water you can find and return quickly, eyes always on the tree line. Marith hasn't come in 2 days. You don't say it out loud because the minute you say it, it becomes real. You boil the water twice and try to convince yourself it's safer now. You add a few wilted nettles from behind the hut and serve it to Joran like it's a royal tonic. He grimaces but drinks. You whisper praise like you're talking to a soldier returning from war. Elric finally speaks. We should leave. You blink. Go where? Anywhere. There's a long silence, punctuated by Joran's rattling breath. You think the next village isn't worse? You ask. He shrugs. Maybe it's better. You both know it's a flavor you haven't tasted in a while, so you don't spit it out. That night, you gather everything. A piece of twine, the good knife, your emergency onion, you didn't hide it after all, a scrap of cloth that could be a bandage or a flag depending on the mood. You wrap it all in a bundle and set it by the door. Joran wakes briefly. You hold his hand. Are we going somewhere? He whispers. Maybe, you say. He smiles, then coughs for a full minute. You can feel Elric's eyes on you. The fire dies out early. You don't rekindle it. You just sit in the dark and listen, to the wind, to the distant creak of wood, to the murmurs of a village folding in on itself. When dawn comes, it arrives reluctantly, pale, weak, like it's lost interest in mornings. You try to get Joran up. He doesn't move. You shake him gently. Still nothing. You press your fingers to his neck, then to his wrist, and you wait. But the pulse never comes. Elric doesn't speak. You carry the boy outside and place him under the oak behind the hut, the one with the twisted roots that look like they're trying to escape the earth. You dig, slowly, methodically. Each shovel of dirt is heavier than it should be. There are no words at the burial, just wind, and your own heartbeat louder than it should be. You return to the hut and sit in silence. The pot is still empty. The bundle by the door is untouched. You're still alive, and you're still hungry. And for the first time, you wonder if those two things are supposed to go together. You don't eat that day. Not because there's no food, though, let's be honest, there's barely a sliver of anything left, but because your stomach has curled into itself, shriveled like a leaf left too long by the fire. Hunger is still there, gnawing, persistent. But grief has a way of muting even the loudest bodily alarms. Elric sits by the fire, which isn't really a fire anymore. Just smoke and a few coals, glowing like the last thoughts in a dying brain. He hasn't spoken since you buried Joran. Not one word. He just stares at the embers as if he's trying to climb into them and disappear. You sweep the floor. Pointless, but it gives your hands something to do. The dust swirls up, catching in your throat. You cough once, then pause, worried, but no fever follows, just dryness, for now. Around midday, you venture outside. The village is still here, technically, structurally, but its soul is gone. Doors hang open. Smoke curls from the ruins of homes. A shoe sits alone in the mud as if someone just stepped out of it and vanished. You don't even flinch anymore. You head toward Marith's hut. You tell yourself she might be there, resting, or hiding, or maybe just mad that you haven't checked sooner. But the truth has already settled in your chest. Her door is ajar. You push it open gently. She's there. Still. Face turned to the ceiling, arms at her sides, expression somewhere between peaceful and resigned, like someone who saw the end coming and chose not to argue with it. You step inside. The room is neat, almost alarmingly so. Bowls stacked, a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth on the table, a note, just a strip of bark scratched with charcoal beside it. To those who remain, eat this. You take the bread. You cry, not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears, the kind that roll down without permission, soaking into your collar. Back home, Elric notices the bread. He nods once, still no words, but you cut it in half and place it in front of him anyway. You eat slowly. It's stale, of course, but dense, filling, real. And it tastes like her, like resilience, like a goodbye with butter and salt. That night, the wind howls through the village like it's searching for someone. The hut groans, the roof leaks, the floor creaks, but the fire finally catches. You sit beside it and sip boiled water flavored with ash and memory. You watch Elric fall asleep, curled up like a child. Outside, the stars blink through the clouds. For the first time in weeks, you see the moon. Just a sliver, but it's there. And in the quiet of that broken hut, with the last piece of Mareth's bread in your belly and a fire warming your knees, you feel something unfamiliar. Not hope, not yet, but something close, like the breath before the prayer. The next morning begins with birdsong. No, really, actual birds. You don't trust it at first. You sit up slowly, neck stiff, back sore, and wait for the usual symphony of coughs, groans, and hopeless muttering, but it's quiet. Not the dead kind of quiet, just still. The birds chirp again. You blink a few times. There, outside the cracked window, a small gray sparrow hops along the edge of the pig trough. The pig is long gone. But the bird is real. You don't smile. Your face forgot how, but you feel something shift. Elric wakes with a grunt. He stretches like a bear, then winces. You hand him the last crust of Mareth's bread. He chews like he's just remembered food isn't punishment. Still no words, but the way he holds the crust in both hands feels like thanks. You step outside and the air smells different. Not sweet, not fresh, let's not be ridiculous, but less rotten, less soaked in smoke and death. The path to the well is muddy but walkable. You collect water and wave to the neighbor's house as you pass, not because anyone's home, you know they're not, but because pretending matters. Back at the hut, you boil the water, then pour half into a cup with a sliver of onion. You're down to peelings now. You pretend it's a tea. You drink slowly. It's hot, sharp, vaguely hopeful. Then you do something unexpected. You clean. Not a desperate sweep, not a panic-driven scrub, but a slow, deliberate tidying. You fold blankets, stack bowls, shake out straw bedding. Elric watches for a while, then starts mending a tear in the wall with some twine. It's barely functional, but the gesture is revolutionary. You both work in silence. No one mentions the funerals, the fires, the food that isn't coming. It's like the air has agreed to pause suffering for just one breath. Then you hear it. Hoofbeats. Distant, rhythmic. Not the heavy clomp of soldiers. These are lighter, faster. You step outside and squint up the road. A rider, just one, cloak flapping, satchel bouncing. He pulls up outside the hut, his horse foaming at the mouth. He's young, not noble, not polished, just tired. His eyes are red, he doesn't dismount. Message from the town, he says, voice hoarse. They're reopening the southern market, survivors to gather in 3 days, food distribution, medicine, church will be sending herbs, maybe monks. You nod. So does Elric. The rider hands you a scrap of parchment. It's barely legible, but you recognize the seal. Official enough. He doesn't wait for questions. He turns the horse around and gallops off, a blur of dust and noise. You go back inside. 3 days, you say. Elric finally speaks. We'll go. It's not a plan, not yet, but it's the closest thing to one you've had in weeks. You spend the rest of the day preparing. You gather every crumb. You repair the basket with wire and hope. You wrap the good knife in cloth. You count the steps from your hut to the village road over and over, not because you'll forget, but because it feels good count. That night, you make a stew from water, the last onion skin, and a wild root you're 80% sure isn't poisonous. It smells strong, like something that wants to live. Elric eats. You eat. And when you lie down, you dream of bread. Fresh, warm, real. You wake up with tears in your eyes, but you're still here. And for the first time in a long time, you're not just surviving, you're planning. You rise early. The sky is still ink blue, the stars barely hanging on, and the air smells like wet stone and promise. You stretch, bones popping in protest, and feel your feet sink slightly into the dirt floor. It's cold. Of course it is. But it's also, dare you think it, quiet. Today is the first of the 3 days. The rider's message still sits on the table, slightly curled at the edges from dampness. You reread it, not for clarity, but for reassurance. It still says the same thing. The southern market will open, supplies are coming, medicine will be distributed. Food, herbs, life. Elric stirs in his sleep, then sits up with a groan, rubbing his eyes like someone emerging from a 2-month-long nap. His beard has grown scraggly, gray in some patches. You can't remember if it was always like that. Maybe you've just been too distracted by all the death. You boil water again. No roots today, just heat and steam. The warmth alone feels medicinal. We'll leave early, Elric mutters. It's not a suggestion. You nod. The plan is as simple as it is ambitious. Pack what's left, walk 2 hours to the edge of the southern path, and hope someone's there with something other than fire and fear. You gather your things. A basket, a dull knife, 2 crusts of bread, the absolute final fragments of Marth's last gift, the empty onion peel. You take it anyway, don't ask why, and a small wool scarf. You consider bringing a bowl but decide the weight isn't worth it. Elric has an old walking stick and a pouch of dried nettles. He eyes your bundle and grunts. Optimistic, he says. You sling it over your shoulder and step outside. The village is even quieter than yesterday. You pass the burnt remains of houses you once knew by smell alone. Tommen's bakery, the herbalist's den, the home of the twins with the terrifying goat. All gone, reduced to ash and half-melted thatch. At the edge of town, you pass the spot where you buried Jorin. You don't stop. You don't need to. His presence lingers in the rhythm of your steps, the silence of your companion, the broken chord of your hunger. As you walk, the forest begins to shift. The trees stand straighter, less like sentries and more like guides. The path, once a nightmare of roots and sludge, has dried just enough to let your boots bite into something solid. A squirrel scampers across the trail ahead. Elric watches it disappear, then mutters, "Reckless little bastard." You laugh. It startles both of you. Maybe he knows the monks are bringing nuts, you reply. A few more minutes pass in silence, then Elric speaks again. "If there's bread, I'm taking 3. You'll take 1. I'll fight you. You'll lose." He almost smiles. By the time you reach the southern path, you can hear voices, not angry ones, not the panicked cries of loss or the command barks of soldiers, just people. Talking, arguing about lines, about names, about whether boiled cabbage qualifies as prepared food. You round the bend and see them. Tents, real ones, canvas strung between wooden poles, smoke curling from small controlled fires, a monk ladling soup into a chipped bowl, a cart filled with herbs and linen bandages, and, most miraculously of all, bread, loaves of it, round and golden and absurdly generous looking. A man in robes steps forward. "Name?" "Elric," your companion says. The man squints. "From?" "Elmswood." The monk nods, scratches something into a scroll, then hands him a cloth-wrapped parcel, bread, a few dried figs, a small jar of something green and sour-smelling, possibly medicinal. Possibly not. It doesn't matter. It's edible. "Name," the monk asks you. You hesitate. Your name catches in your throat. You haven't said it aloud in weeks. You give it quietly. He hands you a smaller parcel. Still bread. Still hope. You both sit by the edge of the clearing, away from the crowd. You open your parcel like it's a sacred artifact. The bread is coarse but soft inside. The figs are slightly sticky. You chew slowly, watching the world around you begin to stitch itself back together. People are talking again, laughing, crying too, but that's always part of the soundtrack. Children chase each other between tents. A girl braids another's hair. An old man snores against a sack of beans. You glance at Elric. He's eating like it's the last meal he'll ever have. But his eyes are calmer now, focused, present. When you finish your food, you lie back in the grass, full for the first time in who knows how long. Above, the clouds are beginning to break. A patch of blue peeks through. Sunlight spills down in gentle fingers. You close your eyes. You made it through the hunger, through the fire, through the silence. And now, maybe, comes something else. Not safety. Not certainty, but possibility. And after everything, that feels like a feast. You don't go back to the village that night. Instead, you sleep under a tree near the monastery tents, the roots curling around your back like an old friend with terrible posture. Elric snores beside you, one arm draped protectively over his food bundle, as if someone might sneak in and run off with a stale fig and a bruised carrot. You don't blame him. The stars blink above, shy and hesitant, like they're peeking out to see if it's safe yet. For the first time in what feels like lifetimes, you sleep without clutching a knife. In the morning, the monks serve soup. Real soup. With chunks. You hear someone say there was barley in it. Someone else claims to have found a bit of meat, but you assume they were just hallucinating from excitement. You eat slowly, savoring every drop like it might vanish mid-chew. As you're rinsing out your wooden bowl at the communal trough, someone taps your shoulder. It's a woman. Strong shoulders, face lined by years, not old, just experienced. She's got the kind of eyes that have seen too much and still get up anyway. "You from Elmswood?" she asks. You nod. She glances over your shoulder at Elric, who's poking suspiciously at a boiled root. "We're putting together a work crew, cleaning out some of the abandoned farms west of here. They say if we can clear enough land, we can grow again. Share the harvest. Trade." You stare at her. Not because you don't understand, but because your brain has forgotten how to process that word. Harvest. She hands you a strip of parchment, dried and reused but legible. It lists dates, tasks, a vague promise of grain in exchange for labor. It's not a contract, it's a seed. We need people who know soil, she adds, and who aren't dead. That last part seems particularly important these days. You take the parchment. Elric reads it that evening. He doesn't say much, just taps his thumb twice against the margin. A yes. The next morning, you report to the clearing crew. You are handed a shovel that looks like it survived 3 wars. Your first job is digging up a patch of land once used for cabbages. Now it's home to rocks, weeds, and at least one very territorial mole. Your hands blister before midday. Elric builds fencing from fallen branches, tying them with twine so old it's more memory than material. A boy from the next village shows up with a cart full of compost and an enthusiasm that makes you suspicious. But the work feels good. Not easy. Never easy, but meaningful. You ache in places you forgot existed, but when you sit for lunch and bite into your bread with dirt still under your fingernails, it tastes better than anything you've eaten in months. People talk as they work. They share stories, names of those they lost, homes that burned, villages that vanished. You learn that Mareth's cousin survived, that the baker's dog was seen roaming near the river and is now a camp mascot named Porridge. You learn that someone, probably half mad, has started collecting spoons. No one knows why, but everyone agrees he seems happier now. In the evenings, the workers gather around the largest fire. They sing. The songs are off-key, old, mostly nonsense. But they echo across the field like defiance. You hum along. The next day it rains, but gently, like the sky is apologizing. You keep working anyway. So does everyone else. By the end of the week, the field is cleared, planted. No one says it out loud, but everyone's thinking it. If it grows, we stay. If it doesn't, well, we've made it this far. One morning, Elric looks at the sprouting green tips poking from the soil and finally smiles. Really smiles. The kind that pulls at his whole face and makes you forget how gaunt it's become. You ever think we'd get here? He asks. You shake your head. Didn't think we'd get past the soup. He chuckles. Still hate turnips. You laugh. Loud. Free. The sound carries across the field. You still miss Joran. You always will. But his name doesn't sting as sharply now. It rests inside you like a stone in a river, still heavy but worn smooth by time. You eat dinner that night with the work crew, a bowl of something thick and salty, a heel of fresh bread, a boiled egg, which feels like a personal miracle. And you sleep beneath the stars again. You dream of nothing, which these days is the kindest gift of all. There's something different in the air. Not just the smell of tilled soil and onion soup, though those are definitely improvements. It's in the way people walk now, less hunched, less cautious, like they're slowly remembering what it feels like to expect tomorrow. No one's skipping. Don't get carried away. But there are nods, greetings. Someone even makes a joke about the soup being less like bathwater and more like broth. It's practically a festival. You wake up with sunlight on your face and a rooster somewhere in the distance, absolutely losing its mind. You smile, because that means someone has chickens again. That means eggs. That means maybe, just maybe, an omelet in your lifetime. At the worksite, the sprouts are taller. Someone's carved a stick into a marker and stuck it beside each row like they're proud parents. You run your fingers along the soft green leaves. They tremble but don't break. Elric is tying up some fencing with a newer rope today, probably traded from town. He doesn't talk much still, but he whistles. It's off-key, unpredictable, and occasionally drifts into what sounds like a goat impression, but it's music. Mid-morning, the monk returns. Not the fire and brimstone kind. This one's short, round, and has a face that's been in the sun so long it's turned into a prune with a beard. He carries a satchel filled with dried herbs, small vials, and folded bits of scripture, which he offers like they're sugar cubes. He gives you something wrapped in cloth. Calendula salve, he says, for burns, or blisters, or morale. You thank him and hand him back one of your 2 precious fig pieces. It's probably the most generous thing you've done in weeks. He smiles. We're holding a small service tonight, he says, by the chapel ruins. Just words, no collection plate. Might be nice to see faces in firelight again. You nod. That evening, you go. Not because you're particularly holy. You've seen what the gods have allowed, but you miss voices. You miss ritual. You miss being more than just hungry. The gathering is small, maybe 20 people, some sitting on overturned buckets, some on blankets. A few just stand, arms crossed, eyes flickering like they're waiting for a ghost to show up and ruin everything. The monk speaks, simple words, about regrowth, about forgiveness, about what it means to bury the dead and plant something in their place. You don't cry, but your throat gets tight. Someone sings, then someone else joins in. It's not a hymn, it's a lullaby, rough, uneven, but soft enough that for a moment you forget how hard the world has been. You walk home with Elric in silence. He doesn't say much, but before you sleep he mutters, "Joran would have liked that." You nod. You don't have to say it. You wake early the next day with an idea, a ridiculous one. You're going to clean the old well, not the public one. They've already done that. The little one, behind the collapsed barn at the edge of what used to be the carpenter's land. The one no one uses because it's haunted or cursed or too deep. You bring rope, a bucket, and 3 prayers just in case. Turns out it's not cursed, just abandoned. You haul up 1 bucket of water, muddy but not foul. You smile. Not because it's drinkable, it's not, but because it's yours. You found it, cleaned it, brought something forgotten back to the surface. You spend the rest of the day clearing brambles, stacking stones, and dragging fallen boards into a makeshift roof. By evening, you've got a decent shelter. Leaky, crooked, possibly tetanus-infested, but it stands. You bring Elric to see it. He nods. "Doesn't smell like death," he says. "That's our new standard, huh? It's an improvement." You both laugh, not because anything is funny, but because it's finally okay to laugh. That night, the stars come out early. The moon is full. Someone nearby plays a pipe. Badly. And for once, you don't mind the sound. You fall asleep with dirt under your nails, a full stomach, and the faintest sense that maybe, just maybe, you're building something worth waking up to. You start calling it the new hut. It's not much. A roof that barely remembers what dryness feels like, 3.5 walls, and a dirt floor that hosts more ants than humans. But it's yours. Or at least it feels like yours. And these days, feelings carry more weight than paperwork ever did. You spend the morning reinforcing the door, which is generous terminology for a plank of wood nailed to another plank of wood. But you tie it off with braided twine and add a rock to keep it from swinging in the breeze. It holds. Miracles come in small, hinge-shaped packages. Elric shows up mid-morning carrying a small bundle. "Found some dried apples," he says, handing you a cloth with 3 paper-thin slices and what looks like half a raisin. You blink. "Where'd you steal this from?" "Your mother," he deadpans. You both laugh, loud and long, until it echoes off the ruined fields and surprises a goat. You split the apples evenly. They taste like childhood, if childhood had been mostly disappointment and surprise sweetness. You chew slowly, letting the flavor linger like it might whisper secrets if you're patient. Later, you join the digging crew again. The soil is better this week, softer, less resistant, as if it too has finally surrendered to this idea of rebuilding. You plant root vegetables alongside strangers who now know your name and occasionally offer unsolicited gossip about who's been sneaking second helpings at the soup line. Someone swears they saw a rabbit yesterday. Not in a pot, alive. Hopping. The news travels like wildfire. There's even talk of catching it and starting a rabbit farm. You silently hope they don't. The rabbit deserves to be wild a little longer. At the communal fire that evening, the mood is warm. A girl braids flower stems into everyone's hair. You protest at first, but end up wearing a crown of wilted daisies and a grin you forgot you had. Elric brings out something wrapped in linen. For a moment, you think it's bread, but no, it's a knife, a new one. "I bartered for it," he says. "The old one's more rust than blade now." You take it, turning it over in your hands. It's nothing fancy, wooden handle, short, slightly dull, but it's solid, dependable, like Elric himself. "I'll cook dinner," you declare. A dozen people immediately perk up like cats at the sound of a tin can. You make root stew. Again. But tonight you fry the roots first. That's the trick. Sizzle them in a little oil scavenged from the herbalist's leftover stash. The smell alone is enough to make people weep. Someone brings salt, actual salt. Everyone cries. Dinner turns into a feast. Not because the food is abundant, but because the laughter is. People eat with their hands, wiping mouths on sleeves, telling terrible jokes that grow worse as the night grows later. You don't realize how long it's been since you felt full until someone offers you seconds and you hesitate, not because you're hoarding, but because you're actually full. After the meal, a girl starts to sing. Not a sad song, not a hymn, something fast and silly and borderline offensive to chickens. And people dance. Awkwardly, yes, but with enthusiasm. Two kids spin until they fall down. An old man with a limp claps off beat. Elric refuses to join until someone pulls him into a shuffle step that looks more like a slow tripping incident. Still counts. You sit back, watching it all. The fire, the joy, the shadows dancing alongside the bodies, and you feel it, clear as daylight. This isn't survival anymore, it's something else. Something after. Later, when everyone is asleep and the fire is nothing but glowing memory, you return to your hut. You light a small candle, serd, place it near the doorway and sit beside it with the new knife across your lap. The silence is different now. Not heavy, not hollow, peaceful. You don't pray. You're not sure who's listening, but you close your eyes and whisper one word anyway. Thanks. You wake to sunlight on your face, not because the roof has holes, though it still does, but because you left the door open last night. On purpose. There's a kind of boldness in that, a quiet declaration. I no longer expect death to walk through uninvited. Outside, the world is damp with morning dew. The fields shimmer slightly. Birds gossip in the trees. A dog barks in the distance. One of those good bored barks. Not alarmed, not hungry, just opinionated. You step out barefoot. The ground is cool, soft, mud sticks between your toes. You don't care. You breathe in deeply, and for the first time in months, the air smells like nothing. No rot, no smoke, just air. Elric greets you with 2 cups of something hot and bitter. I found dried chicory, he says. It's almost like coffee. You take a sip. It's not even remotely like coffee, but it's warm, and it wakes you up, and Elric's smirk makes it taste better somehow. Work continues as usual. The crops are ankle high now, fragile, hopeful things swaying in the wind. People check on them like nervous parents. Every new sprout is a small miracle. Every wilted leaf, a minor funeral. You help reinforce a storage shed today, nailing in boards with more optimism than skill. You hit your thumb twice. Elric hits his once and swears loudly, then apologizes to the nearest cabbage. Someone brings news from another camp. More survivors are trickling in. There's talk of rebuilding the village. Not just tending to what's left, but actually rebuilding. Structures, community, even schooling. A woman named Lynn, who once taught letters to noble brats, offers to open a classroom. Her chalk is gone, but she's carving letters into flat stones with a nail. The first lesson is the alphabet. Half the kids don't care. The other half ask if they'll learn how to write goat fart. You call that a win. At midday, a traveler arrives from a town further south. He's skinny, sunburned, missing 2 teeth, and carrying a pack that smells like cured meat. He brings stories of other camps, of monks with actual bread ovens, of one village that built a windmill out of scrap wood in pure spite. Everyone listens, leaning in. His voice scratches like sandpaper, but his words are honey. He speaks of a river that still runs clean, of fishing, of laughter. It sounds like a fable, but no one interrupts. After he eats, he plays a flute. Badly. It sounds like a goose in emotional distress, but people clap, because these days, even badly played joy is welcome. That evening, someone finds wild mint and adds it to the soup. The smell alone lifts spirits. You watch Elric take a bite and raise an eyebrow in surprise, as if soup had no business being this delicious. Don't get used to it, you tease. He shrugs. He shrugs. Too late. After dinner, you sit under the stars. There's a game going on, stones tossed into a circle, drawn in the dirt. It has no clear rules and even fewer points, but people are cheering anyway. Someone starts a slow clap. Someone else burns their fingers on a hot stone and swears creatively. You laugh so hard your ribs, you think of Joran. Not the sick version, not the pale, shivering ghost you buried, but the laughing one. The one who made faces during dinner. The one who would have bet 3 imaginary coins on the worst player in tonight's rock game and claimed victory anyway. The memory doesn't hurt like it used to. It's warm now. Heavy, yes, but warm. You head back to your hut late. The candle still flickers near the door. A symbol, a habit, a hope. Inside, you lie down on your mat of straw and folded cloth, pull your blanket up to your chin, and exhale. Tomorrow, there will be more digging, more building, more soup, more life. And for the first time in a very long time, you want it, all of it. The rain comes suddenly. Not a drizzle, not a polite mist, a full-on sky-splitting, puddle-making, mud-churning torrent. You're caught halfway between the communal shed and your hut with an armful of firewood and zero shelter. The first drops hit like thrown pebbles, cold and fast, and by the time you make it inside, you're soaked straight through. Your tunic could drown a small mouse. Your boots squelch with every step. Elric's already inside, smugly dry, sipping what's left of the mint chicory brew from a chipped cup. He raises it in mock salute. I told you it smelled like rain. You toss a stick of wood at him, it lands harmlessly, rolls to the side, and he doesn't flinch. Outside, thunder growls low and long. You both sit by the small fire, trying to coax the logs into enthusiasm. Smoke curls upward, hesitant, like even it's unsure about today. The room smells of wet wool, damp ash, and something vaguely resembling onion, probably from the old cooking cloth still draped on the stool. The storm lasts hours. You pass the time telling stories. Nothing dramatic, just scraps. A time you fell into a pig trough. A time Elric thought a goose was a ghost and screamed so loud the priest dropped his candle. You both laugh. Loud, reckless laughter. It fills the room and drowns out the thunder. Eventually the rain slows. The sky turns a pale gray, then soft gold as the clouds slink off to torment another village. You step outside. Everything is soaked. The field is a lake of glistening green. Footpaths have vanished beneath puddles, but the sprouts, those fragile, hopeful little things, are still standing, bent, beaded with water, but upright. You walk through them carefully, checking each row like a shepherd counts sheep. None are dead. One is even flowering. It's just a single bloom, the size of your thumb, pale purple. Ridiculously delicate, but it's there. You turn to Elric. He's watching you, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. What? You ask. He nods toward the flower. Told you had a green thumb. I also have trench foot. Balance. Back at the camp, spirits are weirdly high. Rain kept people in their shelters, but it also cleaned the air. The mud is thick, yes, but it smells fresh, rich, like the world just got washed. The kids are making mud monsters. Someone fashioned a crown out of dandelions and forced it onto the grumpiest goat in the village. It wears it with a level of patience found only in saints and livestock. Lunch is late. The fire pit is soggy, but someone manages to cook a stew using lentils, herbs, and a suspiciously generous chunk of turnip. People gather with bowls and spoons and high expectations. You sit under a makeshift tarp, bowl in lap, knees to chest, spooning the warmth slowly. It's salty, earthy, kind of perfect. And in that moment, watching steam curl into the cool air, listening to rain drip from tarp edges and goats bleat royal proclamations, you feel it. This is not what you imagined survival would look like. It's better, because it's not just surviving, it's living. In the evening, the monk comes back. He carries something new this time, a small book, water-damaged but readable. He offers it like a gift. It's stories, he says. Some true, some not, all old. You take it. You haven't held a book in months. The pages smell like dust and old fires. You press your fingers to the cover like it might bite. Later that night, you read aloud. Not loudly, not performatively, just enough so Elric, dozing by the fire, can hear the words drift through his half-dreams. It's a tale about a fox and a baker. It makes no sense. It has no moral. But you both laugh anyway. You fall asleep with the book on your chest. The candle still flickers by the door, and outside, the puddles reflect the stars. The next morning, something extraordinary happens. You wake up and nothing hurts. No pounding headache, no burning lungs, no twisted stomach protesting yesterday's meal. Your limbs feel heavy but not weak, just used. Earned. Like you've slept the kind of sleep that resets something inside you. The sun is already up, slipping through the slats in your hut like it owns the place. It paints the room in gold, bouncing off the pot, the firewood, the handle of the new knife. Elric's not there, which isn't unusual now. He wakes up early these days, goes to check the field, talk to the kids, pretend he isn't everyone's grumpy older brother. You take your time rising, you fold the blanket, you smooth the floor straw, you place the book, your book, on the shelf you carved into the wall using a spoon and ambition. Outside, the world is loud, not chaotic, just busy. Laughter, footsteps, the occasional clang of a pan. You follow the sound to the field. The crops are tall now, shin-high in some places, knee-high if you're generous or have small knees. The leaves are a darker green, stronger, determined. Elric waves from the far edge. He's talking to Lynn, the makeshift teacher, and pointing at something on the ground. You watch him smile and nod like he knows things again. You help water the plants, you carry pails, you laugh when someone trips in the mud and claims it was a defensive maneuver. At midday, someone calls a meeting. Yes, a meeting, like a real community. You gather near the chapel ruins. Someone set out stones in a circle. You sit. A man stands, Jacob the carpenter's son. Never said much before, but today he's holding a list, a real list. He reads it slowly. Proposals for rebuilding, storage barns, new wells, training workshops. Each word lands like a hammer. Not heavy, solid, certain. People raise hands, discuss, argue even, but the good kind of arguing, the kind that leads to doing. You raise your hand once, suggest reinforcing the southern bridge. Jacob nods, writes it down. Just like that, you're part of something. In the afternoon, a traveler arrives from the north. She carries cheese. Not a joke, not a metaphor, actual cheese. Wrapped in cloth, firm, sharp-smelling. She trades it for herbs and thread. You get a slice. It's strong, salty, slightly suspicious. It's perfect. That night, there's a celebration. No reason. Just because. Someone finds a drum. Someone else starts clapping in time. Children dance. Adults pretend not to, then cave in and join. Even Elric does a slow, awkward two-step that looks like he's fighting a ghost, but he's smiling. You light a second candle tonight, just because you can. And as the fire dies and the music softens and the stars blink slowly overhead, you realize something. You made it. Through the hunger, through the loss, through the silence. And now, into the after. You're not the same. You're stronger in places you didn't know existed. You carry the memory of too many, but also the laughter of the living. And for the first time in a long, long time, you're not just surviving. You're alive. The fire is low now. Just quiet embers, pulsing like a slow heartbeat in the dark. The laughter has faded, tucked away in dreams, and even the wind outside has settled into something softer. Like it, too, is ready to rest. You lie back on your blanket, fingers relaxed, face still warm from the joy of the evening. Somewhere in the distance, a dog lets out one final bark, more sigh than warning. The earth is still damp from the morning rain, but the night carries no chill, just that comfortable hush that wraps around you like a worn quilt. You can still smell the cheese from dinner, the sharp tang lingering like a good memory. The sprouts in the field are asleep too now, their little leaves curled inward, dreaming of sun and soil and nothing else. The candle near the doorway flickers one last time, then goes out. Everything is quiet. You're safe here. The hunger is over. The fire has passed. The names you carry rest gently now, not as weights, but as roots. You've built something, and tomorrow you'll build a little more, but not tonight. Tonight, you breathe. You exhale the ache, and you inhale something you haven't felt in a long time. Peace. So go ahead. Let your eyes close. Let your thoughts drift. Let the quiet hold you. You're not alone. Not anymore. And you've done enough. More than enough.